What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to my channel. Yes, I'm wearing the same top as my previous video because I'm shooting two videos on the same day. I can't be bothered to come back in a few days to shoot again, so I try as much as I can to shoot the two in one day because my goal now is to start uploading two videos every week. I don't want to upload one video anymore. So this is obviously Godly Lifestyle Series part 4. If you haven't watched part 1, do make sure you watch part 1 because I have talked about the introduction and what the series is about. Alright, okay, so I'm going to read James chapter 1 from verse 12 to 15 in the NIV version. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life and that the Lord has promised those who love him. When tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it's full grown, gives birth to death. So that's the NIV version. And then now I'm going to break it down to you. So verse 12 is saying, blessed is the one who perseveres under trial. Now, if you watch the Godly Lifestyle Series part 1, I talked about perseverance in there. I really talked about it. I went deep into it. Please make sure you watch part 1 to understand it very well, because I don't want to go into it too much in this video. But it's saying, blessed is the one who perseveres under trial. Now, perseverance means to do something in despite of difficulty or delay in success. It means to keep pushing forward, to keep going, no matter the situation, the circumstances, or what's been thrown at you. Just keep going. Okay, look at it this way: when a baby is born, when they get to that stage where they're crawling and they're trying to stand up to walk, they crawl a little, they stand up, they fall back down. They crawl a little, they stand up, they fall back down. Do you realize that a baby never gives up? A baby never gives up. Like, you don't even tell that baby to stand up and walk. Like, the baby just keeps trying every single day. He just keeps pushing himself until eventually he can fully stand up and walk. And that's how it is with perseverance. You need to just keep pushing yourself every single day. But James is saying you are blessed if you face trials while you're persevering, okay? Because having stood that test, that person will receive the crown of life. What is the crown of life? That crown of life is honor. I'll give you an example. When you come across young couples who get married and they've been having sex with each other before they get married, people just look at them like, oh, it's just regular married couple. But if you come across another couple who practice celibacy before they got married, do you realize that a lot of people honor them a lot? Because they feel like, wow, these people stood the test. Because being celibate while you're in a relationship with someone is not easy. It's proper temptation. And me talking to you, I'm not in that situation. I'm single, but I can tell that it's temptation. Okay, so when you're going through a time where you need to persevere, there's going to be temptation. For those of you who are looking for a fruit of the womb, there'll be temptation whether you should go do IVF, or especially if you're living in Nigeria. You might have some in-laws that decide to take you to some voodoo juju place to come do something witchcraft to get a baby. There's temptation there. For those of you who want to set up a business and things aren't going well the way you expect them to, there's going to be temptations whether you should do it the quick way, try sell some quick drugs, make quick money. People face all sorts of temptation when you're trying to persevere. But James is saying that you're blessed, because when you've stood that test, when you've passed that test, you will receive the crown of life. That crown of life is a spiritual crown on your head, and it represents honor. People will honor you. When people look at you, they have no choice than to honor you, especially when they hear your story and how you've gone about it. When they hear your story and they've realized that, wow, this person has waited on God, and this is what the person has gone through, and this is how they stood the test, and blah blah blah, they begin to honor you. They treat you differently. Honor is not when you walk into a place and they give you a VIP seat because you're a celebrity. Honor is not, your changing room is there because you special and their changing room is over there because they're nobody. That's not honor. Honor comes with people's behavior towards you, people's character towards you, people's attitude towards you, the way people treat you, the way people talk to you. There's some careers in life, that when you do those kind of careers, you don't really get honor in it. Wrestling is one of them. There's no honor in that. People don't honor you with that kind of sport because people just see it as you're hurting people. That's how it is. That's what you're physically doing. People like doctors, because that position is, it's not some easy position, sometimes they get honored for it. So there's some certain positions in life it doesn't come with honor, and then there's some positions that do. But what James is trying to say is, when you've persevered and you've faced trials while you're persevering, that spiritual crown of honor will be on your head. It will be on your life. And the condition that comes with that is they will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. That's the condition. So if you don't love him, you're not getting it. And how do you know you love him? Is when you obey his law, his law in the Bible. When you do what he asks you to do, go where he asks you to go, say what you're supposed to say. That's when you will receive the crown of life. Look at it this way: when you see Queen Elizabeth with the crown on her head, you know that she's not coming from the gutters. When you see that crown on her head, you know that she's coming from a royal family. As a result of that, you're conscious with how you talk to her. You're conscious with you're conscious with your attitude. You're conscious with your body language. You're conscious with everything you do, because you know that this woman is coming from a royal family. And that's how it is when you have a spiritual crown on your head. There's just something about you that make people want to respect you. There's something about you that make people look at you differently. There's something about you that make people want to make people want to follow you. They're inspired by you. They want to do what you do because of that crown on your head. Okay, so that's what James is saying in verse 12. Now I'm going to move over to verse 13. When tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me, for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. So let's just make this thing clear. God does not tempt anyone because he can't be tempted. And if you really look at it, why would God want to tempt you when he knows that you can fall into sin and he doesn't want us to sin? There'll be no point of that. The only person that can tempt you is either, you know what, let me not go too far actually. I'll emphasize on that later on. But yeah, God does not tempt us, but he tests us. Okay, he doesn't tempt you, but he tests you. There's the difference. Now verse 14, but each person is tempted when they are dragged by their own evil desire and enticed. So what this is really saying is that the temptation you're facing is from your own desire. Now always remember that there's a constant battle between your flesh and the Spirit of God. There's things that your flesh wants, and then there's things that the Spirit of God go against. So you're in like a constant battle every single time your spirit says no, your flesh says I want it. Your spirit says no, your flesh says I want it. And because they're in constant battle, you're going to have evil desire, because all what your flesh wants things that God doesn't want. That's just the truth. Your flesh wants things that God does not want. And that's why you have to be really conscious of what you watch on TV, what you listen to, who you listen to, because these are little seeds that deposit in your heart and they create evil desires. If you're watching movies that have a lot of sexual activity in it, you're sowing seeds of sexual immorality into your heart, and that way you're going to start having desires to have sex with people again, outside of marriage, obviously. Now when James is talking about evil desire, he's not talking about killing someone, he's not talking about robbing things in the store. He's talking about everything that goes against the word of God. That's what's evil, and that's biblical definition of evil. Anything that goes against God's will. Having sex before marriage goes against God's will. Sleeping with your neighbor's wife goes against God's will. Having sex on your period goes against God's will. Stealing from your neighbor goes against God's will. Not feeding the homeless, the poor, goes against God's will. Anything that goes against God's will is evil. Now, James is now saying that the only temptation you're facing is from your evil desire. I'll give you an example of myself, right? For those of you that don't know, I've obviously been single for such a long time, and as a result of that, I've also been celibate for such a long time. But I have to be really honest with you. There are times where, I see a man and I'm like, ooh, and if I don't stop at that woo, little by little, my mind seems to go far if I don't stop at that point. And what James is saying is, in verse 15, he goes on to say, then after desire has been conceived, it gives birth to sin. So what does it mean for your desire to be conceived? Like I said before, when I see that kind of person and I'm like, wow, this person looks really, really nice, or he looks really hot, or he looks really sexy, next thing you know, if I don't stop it, I start thinking about what it's like to be in his arms. Then I start thinking about what it's like to kiss him. Then I start thinking about what it's like to chill out with him. What would it be like if I was in his room? And so on and so forth. So my mind, my desire is now conceiving it. And if I'm not careful, if I give birth to that, then I'll end up sinning by doing it with the person. Do you understand what I'm saying now? So that's what James means by each person is tempted and dragged away by their own evil desire and intents. Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. So after me lusting after someone, if I don't stop at that point and distract myself and look elsewhere or do something else, I could end up walking up to that guy and, we start having a couple of talks and a couple of whatever, and next thing you know, I find myself on his bed. Because it all started from my desire. It all started from my mind. It all started from my heart. And then it now says, when you give birth to sin, and when it's fully grown, it gives birth to death. So after I find myself on his bed, next thing you know, if I get away with it the first time, I might constantly keep coming back. And then I've now given birth to death. Now, the death that he's talking about in this Bible, he's not talking about physical death, even though there are some sin that can lead to physical death, which is you killing someone. If you kill someone, you're going to be killed. I think that is the law in the country. But when the other side of it is spiritual death. Okay, so if you commit sexual immorality, obviously there's spiritual death. To be spiritually dead means to be spiritually blind. You're not aware of what the devil is doing in your life. You're not aware of what the devil has in store for you. You're not aware of what's going on in your life. You're not aware of what God is doing in your life. You're not knowing what is happening around you. You could be surrounded by so much evil and you don't even know, because you're spiritually dead. Little by little, you don't have the desire to pray anymore. Little by little, you don't have the desire to read the Bible anymore. Little by little, you don't have the desire to hear God's word anymore. You don't have the desire to read gospel music anymore. That's what it means to be spiritually dead. So it's very important that when evil desire comes to you, like I said, evil desire is everything that goes against God's will. And that's why it's important for you to read your Bible, because God's will is in that Bible, and you will know what God expects of you and what he does not expect you to do. Anything that goes against that, if it's conceived, you can end up committing sin, and you could end up being spiritually dead or physically dead. So James is saying that if you face any temptation, it's not from God, it's from your own desire. We're very quick to say, oh, the devil put that in me. There are some things that your body is naturally going to crave for it. Whether there's a devil or no devil, your body is naturally going to crave for it. It's your job for you to say no. There was a time where I was going through some temptation, like some real test temptation. Because when you're single, let me tell you, when you're single, as a single Christian girl, you go through a lot of temptation. Hey, you go through a lot of temptation. You come across people and you have to learn to turn them down, because God is like, no. You know what I mean? So one time God said to me, Dami, you can't stop temptation, you can't avoid it. The only thing you can do is say no. So when evil thoughts come to your head, it's your job to cast it down, and it's my job to make sure that I don't put myself in situations where I could get tempted. Do you get me? Always remember, temptation is part of life. You're gonna go through it. You just have to master how to say no, and make sure you don't put yourself in situations that you can fall into them temptation. And for those of you who are single practicing celibacy, because I know the struggle is real, but you go to places like the beach, the swimming pool, you have to master this thing called look away. Yeah, you have to master it, and you have to make sure that you're not always surrounded by the opposite sex all the time. Try and be surrounded by the same sex instead. That will help you a lot more. So that is it for this video. As part of a godly lifestyle, you are going to face temptation. It's part of life. Even people in the world face temptation, but you know the beauty of it, like he said in verse 12, when you've stood the test. For those of you who are practicing celibacy, when you've passed that test, you're not going to be like one of them people when they reach the peak of their career, all of a sudden rape is the one thing that brings them down, or sexual immorality is the one thing that brings them down, because you've stood that test. Okay, so that's it for this video. Do make sure you like, subscribe to my channel. Until my next video, stay blessed and stay beautiful. Bye.